Welcome to another episode of Shift with Elena Agar. In this conversation, I am joined by Lauren Roche. She's the founder of The Naked Truth with Lauren. In this conversation, we talk about wellness and corporate space and how do we actually just manage our corporate careers without burning out. So if you're interested in wellness and just understanding how can you better take care of yourself, this episode is definitely for you. Lauren shares her own journey, her own challenges, and how she overcomes certain mental health challenges, certain stress challenges she deals with, and how does she help her clients do the same. So join the conversation as always. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this episode. Thank you. Lauren, welcome to the Shift Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
This is a long time coming, and I'm so excited we get to chat because you're doing all the things that I absolutely love in the world of work, around wellness, around helping us just be better as human beings and organizations, and ultimately just driving business growth, because I think sometimes business leaders forget that business is about people, and people are the one driving the business, and we have to really start with like the base of what drives our businesses, which is people. So we'll get into all of that. But before we go into, the awesome work that you're doing right now, take me back to like maybe your college days and then walk us back to today and just, why did you decide to get into this space and what did you study? I'm always curious, like what did you study? Where did you work before? And what sparked for you to go independent?
Yeah, great question. So I went to University of Maryland, College Park. I was born and raised in Maryland and now I live in DC. And I actually got business degree in marketing and business analytics. So I took that and ran with it and started my career in government consulting at Deloitte. And I worked on a lot of different tech projects. I worked in different roles on different projects, including product management, product design, or UX UI design for a couple of years, and innovation. So like coming up with tech products, web and mobile applications like 0 to 1. And that was really cool. And then after about 5.5 years there, in February of this year, I quit to focus all my energy on building out my own business and wellness brand called The Naked Truth with Lauren, with the mission of transforming the way that we approach mental health, mindfulness, and manifestation. And ultimately, I'm working to build a supportive community that combats the loneliness epidemic and empowers people to prioritize their well-being. So I guess the catalyst that led me to go from corporate to full-time entrepreneurship was I started with this podcast, and the main goal being to destigmatize mental health and help people feel less alone in their struggles in February of 2024. So it's been about a year and a half. I was producing episodes about once a month. It was hard to do, like with the editing and production and recording and scheduling on the side of the 9 to 5. I, in my own life, have had struggles with my mental health, as we all have as we're human. And I realized that the stigma and shame around it was like making people keep their struggles to themselves, myself included. And I thought it was so strange. And I was like, okay, we need to work on this because obviously there's a gap. And like, I don't want to use business terms. I have to like unlearn some things from business. Basically, there's a lot of room to improve in terms of our health and well-being and talking about mental health. And so I've been journaling a lot, and I recognized my purpose in life revolves around being vulnerable, using my vulnerability as a superpower, and normalizing and help destigmatize mental health. And so I started with like social media content creation, took it to podcasts. Podcasting is so cool. As you know, it's like zero barrier to entry. Like anyone can start it. It's a cool platform that can reach a bunch of people. And in my job, I was doing a lot of user interviews. So I recognized a strength in interviewing, and I really like talking to and learning from people. So I thought that was a good method. And then if February of this year came around, and I was already planning for like a year and a half to go solo. I've always had like an entrepreneurial spirit, and I make decisions now based on if I'm like very old and about to die, would I regret not doing this, whatever this is? And I thought about it and I was like, yeah, like if I never took the leap and took a risk and tried to build out my own business and wellness brand, would I regret it? Yes. So I'm in a position now where I'm young and single and don't have a family to support. So I planned for about a year and a half. I built up my savings and allowed myself to have the runway to really like work on the business full time and take that leap because I wanted to produce podcast episodes like quicker. So now I do bi-weekly and go into like my own consulting and different offerings. Because also like in corporate America, I experienced personally struggling with my well-being and then struggling to keep up with, when COVID hit and we went remote, like back-to-back Zoom meetings and it being so busy and the hustle culture and people not even having time to eat lunch and like glorifying being overly busy. And I'm like, okay, wait, what about the basic human needs? Like, we need to take care of that in order to function and like perform at our best, whether it's personally or professionally. So
Mhm.
I was like, okay, let's do this. And in February, I decided to make the leap.
Hmm. That's it's so relevant. Like I think like I'm listening to this and I'm like, yes, like the corporate world is not made for wellness or any of that. As much, and what I love the most is that I think the intent from companies are like we care about well-being, but then like every year just gets worse. So, it's very interesting to kind of observe and be in the corporate space and kind of seeing that because as I get older and I start to recognize that there's the that I'm just running on fumes sometimes, and you start to realize that the corporate world is just not set up to help you like it's just not that's not the purpose of it. Like that's I think we just have to accept that, and then like or maybe we just need to revamp the whole system in terms of how we do things in the corporate world because it's not sustainable, and especially in specific sectors, it's not made for a woman at all. For example, that's what I'm starting to realize as I'm starting to think about like having a family, and I was like, oh my God, this is not sustainable from any side. So I think, kudos to you for jumping the leap and like making that decision. Because I think a lot of people, I think what you called out is like, am I going to regret not doing this? I think that's such a kind of like practical thing that we all can ask ourselves. And I love that part. But yeah, and I'm excited to dive deeper into the work that you're doing because I know you're full of kind of wealth of information around these topics of wellness. But you also mentioned to me before we hopped on a call that you attended recently the Workplace Wellness Conference. So tell me like what that was. What is it? What is it about? I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, so Mental Health America, the largest nonprofit focused on mental health in America, hosted a conference in DC. And I recently found out their headquarters is in Alexandria, Virginia, I
Mm.
think. And so they hosted a conference the beginning of October that I sent myself to as an individual, which was quite empowering and different from like, Deloitte used to send me to conferences and it was so cool. And
Yeah.
then like really investing in my learning and development and networking and being asked like when I was there, everyone has little name tags with their company and whatnot, being asked like, who are you here with? And I was like, myself, like my
Yeah.
business is called The Naked Truth with Lauren. It was so cool and definitely like a dream come true of mine
Yeah.
that I used to fantasize about. But yeah, so they had various sessions and panels and speakers and experts from like the rise of pop psychology and Gen Z, like using social media and self-diagnosing and then seeking professional help to AI, as you know, huge topic in healthcare and mental health, to workplace wellness strategies. So, specifically, the workplace wellness strategies, I gleaned a lot of insights and then I followed up with one of the panelists after and got reports that he was pulling stats from. So, I could speak to that and how it's essential, like in the workplace, to create a culture of wellness.
Yeah, no, and that's so interesting to the whole self-diagnosis. Like I'd be curious to hear about that, but maybe that's a separate episode. But that's such an interesting point because a lot with all the TikTok and all the social media, like we just self-diagnose ourselves all the time, it seems like, and I think that adds to the larger issue. But yeah, that's interesting. Tell me some of the most shocking stats that you've come across in these reports as they relate to like the workplace.
Okay, so this is a 2022, actually, funnily enough, Deloitte UK mental health report. And the person who was speaking, let me see if I remember his position because I want to quote it correctly. He was
Yeah.
the VP of the Mental Health Commission of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was sharing statistics on, for example, from this report, the 2022 Deloitte UK mental health report. The estimated total annual cost of absenteeism, presenteeism, which I learned is working while sick, and employee turnover can reach up to 56 billion British pounds, which I did the conversion, and it's currently equal to about 75 billion US dollars. And they pointed out specifically the biggest chunk of that cost is due to high turnover, with a bunch of employees saying that they recently left or plan on leaving their jobs in the next year for mental health and well-being reasons. So this is like specific, like bottom line
Mm.
financial impact of people being sick while working, leaving their job due to well-being reasons, etc. And then on the flip side, they talked about ROI. So in the same report, they were talking about like the session as a whole. These panelists, there were like four experts, were emphasizing that successful organizations are now embedding wellness directly into their organizational strategy, which is essential for boosting employee retention and productivity. So it's no longer just like an HR issue, like as you're familiar with, it's a company-wide thing and it's everyone's responsibility to uphold a culture of wellness. And so the same Deloitte report shared that on average, for every, and I'm translating this to US dollars,
Mm-hmm.
about $1.30 invested in employee mental health, organizations are seeing a return of about 7 US dollars.
Mm. You know what's interesting about that is that I think also what we often miss in the profession or just as leaders and organizations is that not only from what it sounds like huge amount of money is being lost on presentism, absenteeism, but also how much you're losing because the person is not at the best that they can be. So they might still be at work and they might still be performing, but it's like like are they performing at like 30% or are they performing at like 80%, right? Like that's a whole thing as well. So that's yeah, these are wild numbers. And to your point, like that's a business case, like because a lot of times, especially in I think like in the last few years we've realized that well-being is important in organizations, but I think even like the CFOs or the CEOs that are like, well, do we really want to, spend money on this? Well, you're going to be losing money, to your point, like if you don't invest in that. It's actually good business. So even if you're like a less empathetic leader and you like just focus on the bottom line, like it's just good business at the end of the day. That's what I got away from this, the stats you just gave. It's just good business to invest in employee well-being. So it's yeah, that's shocking.
Yeah,
Mm.
it is wild. And yes, oftentimes I know a challenge if you are in talent development or HR or employee engagement or a well-being leader within your organization, oftentimes it falls on you to kind of like engage the employees, create a culture of well-being, promote mental, physical, emotional health, whatnot. And sometimes the challenge is convincing the C-suite to invest like actual dollars into wellness initiatives or employee well-being. So those
Hmm.
were stats I found like shocking, like you said, and also like that can promote a tangible business case for the return on investment of like investing in your employees' well-being.
Yeah. And I'm curious, like even in the work that you do, and you're obviously very passionate about this work, and you've been in that seat essentially. But when you look at, when we look at HR, like HR usually looks at like metrics, L&D, and so on. So how does well-being play into all of this?
I think like productivity is directly tied to a person's well-being. So like you were saying, are they performing at 30% or are they performing at 80%? Like what do they have the capacity to do? And the phrase that's coming up for me is like you can't pour from an empty cup,
Mm,
meaning like you have to take care of yourself and your own needs in order to help others. And if someone's unwell, they're not going to be able to perform work tasks efficiently.
yeah, yeah, and it's not just, yeah, it's part of it is efficiently, but then I wonder like how much of it has to do with like when when we feel burnt out and if there's no support, because I'm just thinking like, okay, like people like us, like, yeah, like you and I, we care about wellness. We kind of like, maybe we've had already that experience, but I'm just thinking of like all the Gen Zs that are coming into the workplace and it's the first time they've had the corporate stress. It's the first time they had, and then maybe, no, maybe nobody in their life is like showing them like how to take care of themselves. So I feel like organizations need to provide, like, I feel like that's part of HR's role is like to help these young professionals that that are stepping into your workplace to really help and educate them about some of these things. And I feel like that because I see this a lot with young people in organizations, like they don't know how to handle stress. A lot of them, not everybody, of course. I'm not trying to generalize, but you know, they don't because it's the first time that this is happening, and it's probably like the worst thing that has happened to them in the corporate space so far. So I wonder, like, what are some things that HR leaders can do, or like L&D professionals can do to help support particularly the young population? Because I think everybody struggles, but I think they're the ones that really, kind of need our support from the get-go. At least that's my thoughts. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, very interesting, I want to say, because I think Gen Z is really focused on values and really into health and well-being. Not, this is like a generalization too, like obviously
Mm,
not everyone, but I think they focus on it more than maybe the traditional workforce or other generations, like
yeah.
Gen X, who has been in the workforce for a long time. But you're right, like the transition between like college or whatever school and corporate life is a big
Hmm.
transition, and it's a lot of stress, and HR does have a responsibility. I think everyone, I don't think it's just an HR issue. I think everyone has a responsibility to help with the transition. But I guess, so your question was about what can HR do to help the younger generation manage this
Yeah.
transition?
Yeah, or like leaders, if you're, let's say because you said you've experienced that when you were, in the companies before. So it's like, what would have helped you? Like, what would you like to have seen? What support you would have liked to have? I guess that if HR is listening to this, and are like, well, we know that's an issue, but what can we do? Like, what are the low-hanging fruit, I guess?
Yeah, this is interesting. Actually, I really benefited a lot from the well-being practices and strategies at Deloitte. I know like some companies talk the talk but don't walk the walk, and I actually
Mm-hmm.
think for the most part, Deloitte was really good about like actually embodying well-being. And something that I appreciated is their recognition system. So I think like people need to be recognized, right? But from like the work that they're doing, because validation and appreciation are basic human needs. And it motivates people to continue the work. Like consistent praise increases motivation and decreases burnout. We know that.
Mm.
So establishing a recognition system, I think, would be really good for people to like increase their motivation to continue working, and also like honestly benefiting their well-being. And I did a little bit of research too on like the neuroscience behind this, because I wanted to be
Yeah.
knowledgeable. That's not what my degree is in, but I'm very into doing research. So it's I was researching like when someone is recognized, the brain
Mm.
releases dopamine, which creates a pleasant feeling and then encourages them to repeat that behavior.
Mm.
So, and I don't want this to just be like high level. Like I want to have like tangible examples and practical like tools and strategies that people can implement that this audience listening can walk away with. So, two tangible examples coming to mind from my previous employer that I appreciated in terms of recognition. They had a shout out feature on their internal online talent hub where you could send shout outs to coworkers for specific things they've done well. And
Mm.
I always appreciated that. So I would recognize my coworkers. And then if I got recognition, like it definitely gave me a little dopamine boost in the middle of the day.
Mm.
And they also had outstanding performance awards where you could be nominated by your manager or your peers to receive one for going above and beyond. And it came with a monetary reward too, which like that was
Yeah.
extra nice.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think like if your organization doesn't already do things like that, I think implementing that can help. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that's like an indirect answer to your
Yeah,
question.
no, I think it's valid. I think it is a practical thing because HR can, and yeah, I agree. I think it's not just an HR problem, it just happens to fall into HR bucket, and somebody needs to own it in the organization. So it has to be owned by somebody. I think HR is the good owner, but then it's everybody's responsibility, right? Essentially. And I think it's practical because yeah, recognition is a huge thing in organizations. People love it across all generations. We like it. And if there's some money associated with that, it also boosts a little bit of the financial wellness. So why not? So all of that, I think is valid. But because it's not, like you said, it's not just an HR issue, what are some things that individuals can do when it comes to their wellness? So let's talk a little bit about that because I do think there's multiple responsible parties. And the first most one is you, yourself, and you as an individual. So what are some things individuals can do?
Specifically, like to embed wellness in the workday or just like,
In their life in general, like how do they manage, I guess, life from a wellness perspective? You know what I'm saying? Like how do they, again, like going back to, a young person, let's say, coming into the workforce, what are some things they should know? Like what are some things they can practice? What are behaviors they can implement to help them, transition into the craziness of corporate world?
yeah, that's a really good question. I have my brain is going in so many different directions. I have so
I
many.
know that's because that's your thing. So I know I'm sure you have so many wellness tips or something you can share. What are
Yes.
some, tell me, what do you do? Start with what is it that you do to help you keep you, you know, well and just taking care of yourself?
Okay, so I've established more of a morning and evening routine,
Mm-hmm.
and it has a bunch of mindfulness techniques. And I'm not saying this works for everyone, but this is what I do. I meditate, or I try to meditate daily, and whether that's with an app like Headspace, and whether that's 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever I have time for, whatever I'm feeling, or it could be. Recently, I've been into listening to Deepak Chopra's
Mm-hmm.
meditations on YouTube, if you've heard
Yeah,
of.
I love those. Yep.
Yeah. And I also journal. And I've been doing this for a really long time. Like since I was a kid, for some reason, I don't know, journaling just like resonated with me. And there's the neuroscience behind journaling is helping to process your emotions. So whether
Mm-hmm.
that's like writing out your rage, like there's something called rage journaling, and it's like literally helping your brain like process all everything it's angry or anxious or upset about, just getting it out on paper, or it's like gratitude journaling, something specifically helps you focus on the good and rewire and like count or contradict our human negativity bias. So establishing a habit, and this could be like 5 minutes a day or just three things a day. This is part of my night routine. I will write down three things that I'm grateful for that day, and I've actually started to use a gratitude journaling app. And then I actually incorporate it. I have a weekly gratitude newsletter now.
Oh, love it.
So I incorporate my gratitude practice and just share three things I'm grateful for the week on Mondays, and then encourage the community to share what they're grateful for to hold everyone accountable. And then I will feature that in the newsletter. So the neuroscience behind gratitude is it actually changes your brain chemistry and it activates the brain's reward system, which releases dopamine, the same feel good chemical that we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so over time, the practice strengthens the neural pathways associated with positive thinking, making it easier to notice and appreciate the good things in life. So, like, this is a shameless plug. If you're new to practicing gratitude and you want some accountability to do it consistently, you can sign up for our weekly gratitude newsletter at thenakedtruthwithlauren.com. And that again, that's just like another thing in general to invest in my like mental and emotional well-being is therapy. I mean, I've been in and out of therapy since 2019, so for like 6 or so years now. And it ebbs and it flows. Like sometimes I need it more weekly if I'm struggling, let's say going through a tough transition or a period of like depression or high anxiety. And then sometimes, like after I work through things, I don't need it as much, and I do it like once a month. Like currently,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of doing some upkeep and going to therapy once a month, and then it's not like you have to consistently be in therapy for years on end. You can stop, you can take
Mm-hmm.
care of something, stop, and then start again when something else comes up that you realize like you need to work through. I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I think at some point in your life, everyone could benefit from it. It's just like going to the doctor. Like we all go for physicals, for checkups and like our yearly doctor appointments, but for some reason there's this weird stigma behind the mental side of health.
Yeah. I used to have a joke in my sessions, and I used to say everybody should have three people in their life Continuously, a career coach, a mentor, and a therapist.
I love that.
And so that you should have these people throughout your life and like the different parts of the different stages of your life. Because I think to your point, like I think sometimes we just need some help essentially, right? Or just somebody to talk to that might not be, where your friends or family members might not be the best person for that, or like a professional who can help you dissect, like making sure like, am I crazy for having these thoughts or like whatever it is. So I do, I do have some positive kind of experiences with therapy. I've only done it a little bit way earlier, and now like my gym is my therapy, so I just like to punish myself in other physical ways. Sounds weird, but like just like going like trying to compete with people in my class in the gym, unsuccessfully most of the time. But so I've
Working
kind of
out
huh?
big. Working out is big. Like also like
Yeah.
because it helps your physical and mental health. So that's also part of that would also be a piece of advice for like keeping up with your well-being, going to the gym. And it doesn't have to be the
Mm,
gym. Working out, it could be strength training, it could be classes, it could be dance. Like I've been a dancer my whole
yeah.
life, going to dance classes or just going on a walk outside with friends. It could be like a combination, social and physical activity, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's so practical. And the whole gratitude things you mentioned, I think this is something it took me a long time, but I feel like I'm much better than I was before. Gratitude, has changed my life in so many ways because it's like there's so many things that you can find that are problems in your life, but like the gratitude, like there's always something to be grateful for, for majority of us, especially people listening to this podcast, right? But yeah, and the only thing that I've never been able to pick up, but I think that I know that there's a lot of benefits, the journaling piece, and this is one like you reminded me, maybe I need to get back to that because I am a very busy in the head person. I think a lot of people listening to it probably can relate. Like we just have so many thoughts, and it's like how do you just empty them? So that's a good reminder for myself, honestly. I should really get into like journal. I used to journal, but I it's like I come and go, and most of the time I just go from journaling. So, but I
It
think
could
that's super
be
useful. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be like a physical. I do like the old school pen and paper, but I've
Mm,
also started using AI tools, and this was from a former coworker and mentor of mine, an idea from him. I will do daily, like morning pages style journaling with Claude, and you can use, there's a bunch of AI tools out there, you know? So
mm,
Claude, like specifically, you can prompt it, and my prompt is somewhere along the lines of like, hey, Claude, I'm going to do a morning pages style journaling via voice with you, and I want you to extract the overall mood, high level themes, key takeaways, any open questions, action items, and next steps in a bulleted list format. And then I'll just like go on a walk, talk for 10 minutes, prompt it, and then it'll come back with like a bulleted, like organized list by category of like
mm.
what my brain just dumped.
Yeah, that's really smart. Yeah, I mean that's this is where AI can be really helpful,
Yeah.
right? Like I know we're all terrified about AI, but it is a tool and it can be a partner, and that's a great use case of it. I love that. What other ways do you use it for, like any wellness that you think can? Because I think again, it also makes it accessible for people. It's available and accessible, which is I think half of the battle with well-being, or just when we talk about mental health, is like having something accessible and available to you as a resource right then and there, which I feel like AI can be. Or maybe I'm wrong, but tell me a little bit more about like using AI as a resource and when should you use it and when should you not, if you can speak on that.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to this. I have used it, and specifically, I have the pro version of Gemini, Google's
Mm-hmm.
Gen AI tool. And so you can make like gems, which is like, I think translated to ChatGPT, that's like specific custom GPTs.
Mm-hmm.
If you're familiar with what
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about. And I have a gem for weekly meal planning. So I put like
Mm-hmm.
context of like my background and build, right? And my goals of like I want to increase muscle mass or tone or whatnot.
Yeah.
And like my meals that I usually like or food groups that I usually like. And I made a gem that will spit out like a weekly meal plan with all the groceries I need to get. So it helps me with grocery shopping a lot
Mm.
of times. Sometimes I follow it, sometimes I don't. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, that's a good meal idea. Sometimes I'm like, I would never eat this. Like I'm just gonna go rogue and do my own thing. But that's one way that it's been helpful. Another way is like for workout routines. I've used it like if I get bored of my current workout routine or I pursue a new goal where I don't really know how to accomplish that because I'm not a personal trainer or anything. So, and I'm not saying replace personal trainers with this, like personal trainers are awesome and I highly recommend working with one and they can't be replaced by AI, but AI has helped me in the past create workout routines and so like kind of hold me accountable in the realm of physical health. I will say in terms of like when to not use AI, I'm getting skeptical the more I read about people using AI for emotional support or
Mm,
like as pseudo therapists. I don't think that's great. I think you should seek professional help from a licensed mental health professional and or therapists and psychiatrists in that realm, so I think it's limited there.
yeah, no, I tend to agree. It's not quite there yet. Although people having relationships with AIs and all of that, but I don't think it's meant for any of that. I think that's going down a dark path once we go there. But no, that's super practical, and yeah, and I think it's a good call out because I think there's so many good spaces where we can use AI as a tool to help us, even in the workplace, and as I'm listening to this also from like an HR perspective. I think also even providing a resource like that, like a paid version of a chat GPT or like a Gemini to your staff where they can like, or maybe even design an agent that can help them with whatever it is that they want, right? Like help them design or whatever it is, there's different tools to do that. I think that's super helpful because it's just another resource and tool at a fraction of a cost that it would cost to, I don't know, use something else.
Hmm.
So I think that's where AI is super helpful. Um, how do you see like as the future work kind of evolves, right? And how do you see human performance and like what are you like are you worried? Do you feel like we're going in the right way? What should we focus on? Like what are your thoughts and just in general like in future work and with your focus on wellness and for individuals and mindfulness and all that, like what like if there was one thing that we should focus on, like what is that to be a good like a solid performer in our lives and our careers?
I force myself to think about this and provide one answer because, again, my mind goes in several different ways, and I'm like, oh, we should focus on XYZ.
You can share all of it. But
But
start,
I think
so give me the top one and then you can share some other subcategories you think could be good.
Okay, yeah, I think resilience is key. I think, especially in today's climate with the constant change we're experiencing and the unprecedented events that are happening, I think change fatigue is very real now. That term was introduced to me by a well-being leader, and I know that a lot of employees are feeling it, and it's important to have space to process the emotions that come with constant change and to
Mm,
cultivate a resilient mindset to move forward effectively and perform at your best and be the most successful that you can be. I think ultimately a resilient workforce is the only one that can successfully adapt to the evolution of work
mm,
without burning out. And I will insert another shameless plug here. So I run tailored corporate wellness workshops. I have a menu of different offerings, and one of my corporate workshops focuses specifically on navigating change and building resilience. I I'm it was requested of me, I guess is what I can share right now. Um, but yeah, in terms of like embedding wellness and building resilience within your company or your team.
mm,
Um, I mean, my workshops range from implementing mindfulness techniques to establishing gratitude habits to clarifying goals to building resilience, journaling, and more. So, to learn more in terms of that, you can fill out the contact us form at thenakedtruthwithlauren.com/contact. But I think, like, overall, I think, like, resilience enables, like, the skill development. So, like, skill development is also another thing, but like at the rate that things are progressing right now, the skills an employee needs today might be obsolete like tomorrow. So I think resilience is what allows an employee to effectively acquire and apply new skills over the course of their entire career. So I think it
mm.
like underlies that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the skill that we need the most, right? Because technologically, there's skills. You'll upskill, you'll learn stuff, but I think at the end of the day, what's going to help you continue to move forward is that resilience, right? And to your point, to kind of bring the full circle, resilience comes from also being able to recognize, grateful moments in your life, like that gratitude, going to the gym, that's going to help you moving your body, not necessarily gym, but moving your body to release as many good feel chemicals the most natural way that you possibly can, right? Like I think that's where it's at. To your point, even like with like meal planning and food, like how much food impacts us, like all that adds to resilience. So absolutely, it's and that's the hardest part for us people because that's like, what do they say? The worst thing that has happened to you is the worst thing that has happened to you. And when something new bad happens or something shocking or challenging, the only thing that's going to keep you going is your mindset at that time, aka resilience, aka your ability to manage change. So yeah, I think that's super solid advice for sure. So you've mentioned your podcast. Tell me a little bit more, and where can people find, like, who is it for? Who do you talk to? And like, we'll include everything in the show notes, but tell me a little bit more about the podcast.
So it was born out of my own mental health struggles with both depression and anxiety. Um, and after getting this was like a couple years back in 2022, and after getting myself in a good place and establishing mindfulness habits and routines and finding a therapist and exploring mental health medications, all that, I started creating motivational content, which started on Instagram. And then I created the podcast. I thought it'd be cool to start a podcast to create audio and video content this way with the goal of helping others feel less alone in their struggles and again
Mm,
destigmatizing mental health. It's something like I would have liked to have at the time, where I was struggling. And I'm a very creative person and I like identify with the role of content creator. So it's just another way to create content. People can find it on all platforms. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you listen to it. You can also find it through my website. And it's for really anyone, but I would say like busy professionals. If you're struggling in a transition in your life, whether that's like career related or not, or if you're struggling to prioritize your well being, or just struggling like with your mental health in general, and maybe it can also be for people who might not have the resources for therapy, because I know like that's expensive.
yeah.
So it's not a replacement for therapy, and I
Mm-hmm.
am not a
Mm-hmm.
licensed mental health care professional. I cannot emphasize that enough. Maybe in the future, but I interview different experts. I'm actually speaking with a therapist, an EMDR therapist specifically, who I'm going to interview for my podcast in December, which I'm really excited about. And I met a lot of people at the Mental Health America conference who are certified professionals in the field, who I'm talking about being guests on my show as well. So it's just like you have access to educational materials and resources if you might not have like the financial means to afford therapy currently, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll make sure to share that show notes because I think we can all, I mean, even, those of us who have experience in well-being strategies, I think there's always something new we can learn. And I know like from my side, like every time I hear some like a different perspective, it's always like, well, I haven't thought about it that way. I haven't thought about wellness in that way or mental health in that way. So it's always helpful for sure. So I'll make sure to share that in the show notes. And your website is also The Naked Truth with Lauren?
Yeah, thenakedtruthwithlauren.com. And
Nice.
I'm not sure when this will go live. Do you know?
I don't know yet, but it'll probably be in December sometime.
Okay, cool. So for your audience, I'm also interviewing you
Oh
shortly,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
think
that's
it'll
right.
be
I'm coming on your podcast. Yeah.
yeah, we're doing a guest swap. So yeah, so I'll also promote your stuff as well. I think that'll probably be out early in 2026.
Yeah. Nice. I look forward to it. Very excited for it. Well, Lauren, thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you're doing, for helping us just take care of ourselves a little bit better. And I think there was a lot of tangible takeaways for individuals, but also for HR people like myself who are in talent space and like, what can we do differently or better for our staff? So it was nice talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me and for this really meaningful conversation.